So we've created a couple of forms, in fact several forms. We got this one here, which is the one we created manually by putting the subform in, and equally we created this one using the wizard, and we've ended up with basically the same thing. I'm going to get rid of the wizard built one just to show you. I wanted to show you that that could work, but we can still see that one's working nicely. The thing about this form is, if you notice that apart from the label at the top here, which will change, I now have no means of moving backwards and forwards through records. We'll eventually switch everything off of here and everything else. So I want to start adding control back in. This is the main thing. Remove the control from the forms and then start adding control back. You should be in control of what the user can and cannot do. And again, this is where the property sheet comes into its own. This thing at the top, the black box is there, so I'm talking about the form, and this from learner is because I have no caption. But if I put in there learner details and I run the form, then I can see that that's changed up there, and that's an easy little thing to do, but it personalizes the form. Now I want to have some navigation buttons, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to separate out the form to reveal the form header. I'm going to go to the button tool and I'm simply going to click. I'm not going to drag anything out, just click. I'm going to, what I want to do is I want to navigate through the buttons, so therefore record navigation, and I'm going to allow myself to go to the first record. I can either have an image or use text. I'm going to have an image, and then I'm going to look at each one, and I think that one's fine. I'm then going to call these something. Now this is a button, so it's btn underscore first, and that will just tell me, that's giving it a name, so if ever I need to look at this code or anything else, it's there for me to work with. I'm going to do that again for another button, and this time I'm going to previous. Next, keep with the picture, next, and then btn previous, and again next, keep with that image, and then btn next. And last but in no way least, this one here, which is go to last record, next, keep with the image, next, btn last. Now I've got these, and these buttons are generally very large. Experience has told me that if we select all four and we go to width and height, if we change those to 0.6 in both cases, then you'll end up with buttons where the icons will work just about right. Anything smaller than you start to eat into the imagery. Now I can actually start to move these around. Maybe I want to put those up to here. It's up to you where you place them. You should make sure they're in your design, wherever you've designed them to be in your hand-drawn designs. That's where they should go. Don't bother about moving this up at the moment, because I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to bring in another button, and under form operations I'm going to choose close form. So you can see there's a number of things we can do here. There's lots and lots of different things we can do. For form operations, close form, next. I'm going to that might do. I actually feel that stop don't press, but we'll go for that one, and then btn close, finish. That again 0.6, 0.6, so choose over here 0.6 and 0.6, so that should allow me to see that quite clearly, and I can then move that into the position. And I'm doing this very roughly, but now if I move this up, once I'm happy I've got all the buttons I want and run this form, I can actually move through the records, and I can even exit the form. Now if I do that, it's going to ask me to save because I haven't saved it, but normally when I run that, it doesn't ask me to save. I can make changes to things and it will save. So that's how to add a simple button. The other thing I wanted to have a look at is to create another form for ourselves, and this form's going to be one that leads into our existing form. Probably best if I show you, and then you'll realize what we're trying to do. I'm going to use these controls again. This is an unbound form, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this one the caption. I'm going to say select learner. I'm going to go through the options, and I don't want anything apart from the form view being allowed. I don't want I want dialogues. I don't want record selectors, navigation, scroll bars, control boxes, close, no scroll bars, movable. I don't mind. That's either there. By the way, the one that says here resize is where you're allowed to grab the corner and change it. Sizable borders, and basically we don't want to be able to do that. Movable means I can do this, and that's a perfectly adequate thing to do. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to grab the tools up here, and this is the drop down, the combo box is called here. I'm going to click there, and it's going to ask me where I get the data from. Now actually I'm going to get the data from my query. I'm going to go to query and the query learner that we built all that time ago. Now the one thing I've just remembered about my query that I just want to cancel out of that. I've got to remember that this one is asking me for parameters, so what I want to do is I want to remove those parameters completely. So this is going to list all of my users, and just to check, lists everyone. Excellent. The only other thing I have got to remember is I need the learner ID in there, and I'm going to drop that there. It doesn't matter actually where it is, but I do want that in there, so I have those there. I don't need these two, so I'm going to remove first name and last name. So my query simply lists the learner ID and the name of that learner in that format. Save the query. Now I'll bring the combo box in. I will keep the I will look for the value in the query. I'm not going to type it in. I'm going to select query. I'm going to go to queries and choose query learner. I'm going to take both across. I need the learner ID because that's the relationship, but the human part is the name. That's the part people are going to see. I'm going to order by name, so they'll be in surname order. I'm going to close down this first column. So there's the learner ID. I'm going to close it off. I'm going to widen this a little bit. Click next. That means it won't be viewable. Now what it is asking me is, what do I want to actually have stored? When I select something, what do I want this combo box to actually store in it? And I want it to store the learner ID. It's that value which is the relationship. This is the connection between this form and the previous form we created. Please don't confuse these. It's not about what the user will see, it's what the box is actually holding. So I'm going to click next. Don't worry about name. Click on there, and now I have a combo box, which if I widen that a little bit and I run the form, I have all their names there. And now I'm going to grab a button. I'm going to click on the button. I'm going to say form operation, open form. I'm going to open my from learner. And I'm actually going to open the form and find specific data to display. So I'm actually going to get this. So I choose the name, click on the button, it will load up my previous form with that person's name on there. I'm going to connect my combo box too, and that's why the value was so important, because it's got the learner ID in here. So the combo box 2 has the learner ID of the person I'm interested in, and all I'm going to connect it to is the learner ID on the other form. So it's actually going to connect those two together. I'm going to click on the connection. It tells me they're the matched. I'm going to click next. It's now going to ask me, so I'm just going to change this to text in this case, and I'm going to put view details. Next, and btn select. There we go. I have a form. I'm going to save this form, and I'm going to call it from select learner. Now if I click on there, I can select a user and view details. There's Mickey Mouse. That was an obvious one, but what if I choose Helen of Troy? Helen of Troy comes up. So I've now got a system which allows me to select someone's details, and now it will show me those details inside the form. So I've got a selection box, which actually means I shouldn't need these navigation buttons because I'm not planning on navigating through. I'm actually giving the user much more control by saying, okay, select the person you're interested in, view their details, and then you have a whole list there. That, I think, is probably more useful. Hope that's been helpful. We'll have a look at making these forms even more complex and clever by doing something called unbinding.